Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for attending at short notice the press conference of the Democratic Labour Party, which we have called in response to the statement by the acting Prime Minister yesterday in relation to the breaking news on the vaccine situation coming out of the US. We haven't had that information here up until yesterday, but we have our information in relation to what seems like a scam in the procurement of vaccines. Now, the press conference, as far as the Democratic Labour Party is concerned, has thrown up a lot more questions than it has given answers. And so we are looking to have those answers given. We will be making a statement, and also we need to have some questions answered, because the entire situation and what we have coming out of us sounds very different from what we were told back in March and April, when we were told that there was a grouping of businessmen who were forming a company in order to receive donations, and that this was a philanthropic exercise. That is how it was sold to the people of Barbados. What we're seeing coming out, though, has a profit motive, and we therefore need to have explained to us what the true nature of the contract was, the agreement, if it hadn't reached the contract stage, so that the people of Barbados have an understanding of exactly what it was that we were getting ourselves into. Because let's face it, this is news now because it has gone south. But had it gone according to plan, we need to know what the outlay of the people of Barbados was expected to be. It is not enough to just say that so far we have not paid out any money, nor do I, as an attorney, knowing the relationship between an agent and a principal, nor am I comforted by simply hearing that the loss is not ours, but it is the agency, because that really depends on the agreement between the agent and the principal. So we need to know the details of the arrangement. We need to know what percentage, if any, commission was to be paid to the consortium here, especially since we know that there was a government representative on that body. So we are concerned. We need to know what that profit motive was, what that profit margin was. Because looking at the documents filed in the American courts, we're seeing a price tag of $10 a dose, when we know that Oxford AstraZeneca has made it very clear that they were dealing directly with governments or through high commissions, and that their price was $3 a dose. So we need to have some clarity given to the money aspect of it, to the legal aspect of it, and we really do need to understand why it is the government would go to brand new companies, the ones set up in order to represent the interests of the government of Barbados is a recently formed company, even though the personality behind the company is a known personality. This particular company is new, and neither that personality nor that company had any track record in procurement in the medical field. So we need to know why it is that Radical Investments was the company that was chosen for such a high level negotiation, if at all a negotiation was required. And the second question that we need to have answered is, why were there not hints picked up, since the acting Prime Minister insists that there was due diligence, why it is that the name of the company, if nothing else, it is obviously an entertainment company by its own name. Why is it that no due diligence was done behind a company that by its own name and objective is for entertainment purposes? Why that would be the chosen company with which to deal in order to procure vaccines for Barbados? I take the point that the manufacturing companies are dealing in bulk only, but let's face it, Barbados is already part of a grouping that could negotiate in tandem, and that is called CARICOM. We did not need to have a middleman, and we need to know what really was the arrangement with that middle grouping and all of the other players, because every time you look, there was another layer added on in terms of persons involved going down the chain, and we need to know what the commission was at each stage so that we know what it is. If this had not gone south, what is it that the people of Barbados were going to have to meet as a final bill for this deal? That is a critical point, because it is very clear that none of the ordinary procedures for issuing of contracts was followed, and we know that we'll hear that we are in emergency situations, and we understand that. But even if you are acting in an emergency situation, you still have a duty of care as a government to the people of Barbados. And this is a primary focus that the Democratic Labour Party wishes to have addressed. It cannot just be that you say in one short press conference where no questions are invited or expected. It is not enough to say we did due diligence. You need to let us know what steps you took to ensure that you were entering into a bona fides transaction. And especially since coming out of today's information now, we are learning that the American courts may well be declining to take up the jurisdiction of the court action. So then we're speaking very likely, which we were probably speaking about in any event, lost bargain and lost money. And we therefore need to know the answers to all of these questions. Why is it that we are having this playbook, a constant playbook with the same players, and then we are told one story at the beginning and another at the end? And we have the Minister of Health and Wellness disassociating himself from a deal that intricately involves his ministry. We need to have these questions answered on behalf of the people of Barbados. This is, it's so hard to call it a contract. This is a deal that we need to have the specifics of so that we can know whether or not the acting Prime Minister is correct, and that we ought to be grateful to this consortium, because how it is looking and how it is reading is that this was a profit deal. And we don't begrudge businessmen making money, but let us know that that is what it is about. Don't sell it to us as one thing and then it turns out to be something else. And if that is the case, give us all of the specifics and let us be the ones to make that call as to whether or not this was a good bargain on behalf of the people of Barbados, and by extension the other two countries that are stated to be involved. Because if there is one thing that is absolutely certain, it is that this entire deal, which I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say it stinks, this entire deal also does significant damage to our vaccine program here, because the credibility of the entire exercise takes a hit. That is an undeniable fact. Therefore, we need to have the assurances. We need to see the information. We keep getting leaked documents. I'm sure you, members of the press before me, are receiving the very same documents that we are. And they are colored in a particular way that does not speak to an above-the-board transaction. And that is why the Democratic Labour Party is now calling on the government of Barbados to again come and explain with the documentary evidence the nature of this contract and this deal, first of all, between the St. Lucia Company and the Barbados government. And then secondly, because we are seeing that if the leaked documents are to be believed, we are seeing that there was direct contact in any event with the Ministry of Health and Wellness. So we need to understand the nature of that relationship as well, what documents have already been signed, and what is the liability of the government of Barbados that the people of Barbados will have to foot the bill of in some time in the future.
Right, good afternoon to the media. My name is Andre World, the party spokesperson on health, water, and sanitation. And I just wanted to join with our president in terms of raising some concerns with regard to the information that we received coming out of the vaccine scan. And the fact that we are all learning this based on information which were filed in the US law court. But from a health perspective, there are certain concerns which the country needs to pay attention to. And I was not necessarily pleased with the manner in which the acting Prime Minister Santia Bradshaw dealt with some of these issues yesterday. Because the sequence of events from the way how she portrayed it does not necessarily match with what was going on within the country, and also what we know to be established facts with related to the procurement of vaccines internationally and globally. First, I would want to point to you that from February this year, through the European Union, they had made the scope of anti-fraud bodies warned against COVID-19 vaccine scams. And this was 15th of February 2021. In particular, urging the European governments at that time, because at that time they were going through difficulties obtaining the AstraZeneca vaccine for Europe. And a number of companies were actually in that stage scamming governments in terms of procuring either false vaccines or overpricing them. And the European Union warned against entering into such agreement. And I believe that this was also followed through by the World Health Organization and PAHO as well. And for that reason, you have COVAX being established here within the CARICOM region. So for that reason, we would wonder why, knowing all of this in February 2021, would this government choose to enter into an arrangement to try to procure vaccines for Barbados and possibly other countries within the Caribbean without going through legitimate channels? Now, through the Ministry of Health, we have legitimate channels here in Barbados that these vaccines could have been procured. You have the Barbados Drug Service, which every single year enters into contracts to supply this country with millions of dollars worth of drugs and deal directly with the international pharmaceutical companies such as AstraZeneca, which produced one of the vaccine and the vaccine in question here, Pfizer, and all of the pharmaceutical companies all over the world. We also have reputable pharmaceutical companies here in Barbados which act as agents and distributors for these companies. One such company would be Collins Limited, which is also very philanthropic in their output, a company that goes under the radar but gives generously in terms of assisting Barbadians when it comes to healthcare concerns. And this is a company which has over 100 years in expertise in dealing with the pharmaceutical industry and has worked with agencies such as GlaxoSmithKline, AstraZeneca, at points in time, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, all of the major vaccine suppliers throughout the world. So why didn't the government of Barbados enter an established relationship with some of these same pharmaceutical companies? They're not just Collins, but you also have Brighton Stokes, you also have Armstrong Agencies, you have Andy Drug Service as well, which has the expertise in dealing with these things. So these are significant questions which we need to get some information on. And we also questioned to the Minister of Health, stating that he, in a statement to Barbados Today, I believe it was, that he knew nothing about the process, where documents are being circulated having been signed by the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health in April of this year surrounding the same vaccine issues. So that begs the question, does the Minister of Health have a communication channel with his Permanent Secretary? Does he has regular management meetings? And why isn't something as fundamental and as important as this not being discussed with the Minister of Health? We also have to beg the question too, does the Minister of Health has a good working relationship with the Prime Minister? Because we have heard several rumors that he had planned to resign or whatever the case may be. And the mere fact that the Minister of Health does not know about this begs the question. Someone needs to come to the people of Barbados and state the facts and tell the truth and set the record straight. Because you cannot have the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Health and Wellness signing off on documents and then the Minister of Health come to you and tell Barbadians that he does not know anything about it when asked by a reputable newspaper in Barbados for further clarity and details on the matter. So he needs to set the record straight on that. There are a number of issues that this thing brings to light. Now, in terms of the acting Prime Minister yesterday gave some dates for the vaccines, procurement of vaccines. Now, we had vaccines in Barbados from the 11th of February 2021, but she would have you believe that all of this took place from April and May 2021. But I would want Barbadians to remember that on the 11th of February 2021, we received the first shipment of vaccines from India, sourced directly from the government of India, where they made a donation of 100,000 doses to Barbadians, and we received the first 50,000 on the 11th of February. In that agreement, there was also provision for the government of Barbados to purchase additional vaccines directly from India, where you will deal with the government-to-government transfer, where you will know the legitimacy and be able and the validity of these vaccines that you receive. Why was this not done by the company? If you chose to establish a company to procure vaccines, why did you not go that route? We were also not in a desperate situation for vaccines because, again, on the 6th of April, we received our first COVAX shipment of vaccines. Since then, we also received vaccines from China, the Sinopharm vaccines. We received other COVAX shipments of vaccines, and we also received the Pfizer shipment of vaccines. The most recent supply that we received, the Pfizer shipment of vaccines coming directly from the US. And we also received another shipment of AstraZeneca vaccine directly from the government of Canada. So what was the urgency for the government of Barbados to go out to procure vaccines at almost double or triple the price, as the president mentioned, more than $3 per dose, and looking to purchase at over $10 per dose? Those things need to be clearly outlined. And we need to understand what was necessarily the thinking of the government of Barbados in the procurement. There were options available to them using reputable companies and also the drug service, which should have had a more integral arrangement with this company. Does the company even have a doctor or a pharmacist or someone who has this experience working on their behalf? But that is a matter for the company. But our interest here is that the government of Barbados should have done their due diligence and cover all of the parameters in terms of setting up this arrangement. So we need for the government of Barbados not just to have the mantra of transparency and openness as a political statement, but they need to bring it to the people of Barbados. They need to live that for the people of Barbados, especially in an era where we have that you have a vaccine fund, an off-budget vaccine fund, which the Prime Minister announced in her response to the estimates on the 23rd of March, that it had already raised $7 million, with $6 million coming from one source, which was the Sandy Lane Charitable Trust. I think that given what we have heard or the information coming out from this entire scandal, there needs to be a bit of transparency and openness as to how this vaccine fund has been managed. And this is possibly something that should be done through the Auditor General, but Barbadians need to have a good accounting for how the funds in the vaccine funds have been managed, what it stands at now, what those funds have been used to pay, how much funds did they collect in total. Because I am not comfortable with what I've seen outlined in the document, and I'm certain that it leaves many Barbadians suspicious and wondering how is this government actually managing its affairs? It is okay to say that you have not used taxpayers' money, but does that account for the funds coming out of the vaccine funds which were donated by private individuals and private companies? So we need full transparency and accountability for this matter.
Thank you. The short story is that Radical Investment and Good Vibrations Entertainment are names that should have thrown up red flags in any due diligence exercise if one was done. And even if that didn't do it, then dealing with a personality carrying a name that sounds very much like Money Lady should have been a hint. So the government of the day definitely has to answer to the people of Barbados as to what due diligence was done. Why is it that we have a fledgling neophyte company that is fronted by a construction magnate, let's be real, more known for cement and not known at all for the procurement of medication? And why is it that Barbados has found itself internationally scandalized by this turn of events? And we're watching carefully the players that are also involved. The St. Lucia government is involved. Is there, what was the nature of the relationship between St. Lucia and the Bahamas and Barbados, except of course the results of their elections, and we're very much aware, 2 down and 1 to go. But outside of that, is there any connection? Is there any blowback coming to the people of Barbados in relation to the dynamics of this entire scheme in relation to those 2 administrations, especially since they have just changed hands? What is it that the people of Barbados have coming in their future in relation to this entire exercise? These are the questions that we need to have answered, and that we need to have answered as a matter of urgency. And I don't think just coming with a statement is sufficient. The government really does need to face the people and take the hard questions and supply the answers that are asked for.
Any questions?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Madam President, just quickly, you would have mentioned that this issue has somewhat, and I'm paraphrasing here, tainted Barbados' vaccination effort. I would like you to elaborate a bit on that for me, please. How exactly do you see that correlation?
First, let me state the Democratic Labour Party's position on vaccines. We are definitely pro-vaccine. All of the science, we are following the science, and the science indicates that the vaccines have great efficacy in this fight against COVID-19. We, however, have always held the view that it was a matter of education. We can hold that opinion, but if we don't share why we feel that way and then bring others on board, then we are not in a position to be speaking emphatically about vaccine use. And that is why in February, we started our campaign of education in relation to vaccines by way of the Sunday roast that we held in that month, one of the Sunday roasts that we held in that month. Education is important because people, it is about their bodies, and whilst the state of our laws does not give autonomy to bodies as people think, we have reached a stage in our development where it is an expectation of the people that they get to make these weighty decisions on their own behalf. So we are already having a situation in Barbados, to get to your question directly now, where there is vaccine hesitancy, and we are spending time educating and, let's face it, cajoling, because we've reached that stage now as far as the government is concerned. They haven't belatedly come on board with the education drive. And the whole drive towards that education is now stilted. I've been fielding questions for the day. What about the other vaccines that we received? Is there any controversy surrounding them? And that is why I am glad that Comrade Andre spoke about where we receive those from and they're being legitimate sources, because that comfort needs to be put out there that the ones that we have received so far have come from legitimate sources. However, this particular batch, had it been successful, I don't know that we would be able to speak with similar confidence about this source, because there are just simply too many middlemen. So that we have to be now talking up the ones that we have already, whilst reassuring that we have not seen anything to suggest that there was anything untoward with those shipments, because they arrived from established channels and sources. But that was not going to be the case with this, and with a significant outlay like 10 million US dollars, whether it's shared amongst 3 governments or not, it is a significant outlay. And we need to be always clear that our vaccine program is above the board.
Okay, if I may be devil's advocate in this case. Sorry.
You can continue.
Oh, you wanted to add something?
No.
Okay, all right. Right, if I may be devil's advocate in this case, the argument is put forward is an issue of access, it's an issue of volume. 1 million vaccines was the order of the day. Companies are set up all the time because we have no idea what you might, who your contacts might be. You might have contacts that I may not have contacts with. That argument, does it hold water in your view? I mean, and that seems to be what was put forward.
Well, let's just start at the back end of your question. It is pretty clear now that who was fronting for the government of Barbados had no access and had no contacts. So that just blows that argument out of the water. But as we stated in the press conference proper, Barbados already is part of a grouping that can do bulk buy. It is called CARICOM. We don't have to recreate a space. And outside of that, if I may finish, outside of that, the access to vaccines, AstraZeneca, never mind the others, AstraZeneca made their position clear. We are dealing directly with governments. Approach us through your High Commission. They made that abundantly clear, and also that they were selling at cost. There was no profit margin for them. So to introduce a middleman and to introduce costs, and especially significant costs, which could buy another 1 million doses, let's be real about it, okay? Even if you factor in shipping. We had already established channels for access, and we definitely already had contacts. I don't have any permission to call names, but I'm pretty sure that the head of the drug service has somebody on speed dial at AstraZeneca and on a first name basis, because she does this on a daily. I am certain the same thing will apply to other any of the pharmaceutical companies that are established in Barbados. There was no need to create a company, because we have taken note of the stated date of incorporation of the companies, both of them. So there was no need to create a company. There was no need to insert a neophyte who has zero expertise in this field and clearly no contacts either. It was never going to be with any due diligence and exercise that passed the sniff test.
I want to add another layer to the question, so you just answer everything in one. If I remember, from what I remember of that, from the COVAX facility, leading up to the first shipment, those were delayed shipments, by the way.
Yes.
They were always coming but never came. Eventually, they did come sometime later on. Couldn't that have provided some anxiety to, let's say, the government said, let's try a different channel, because obviously this channel was more of a trickle down, and given as the acting prime minister would outline the Wild West approach, and again, I'm just being devil's advocate here, the Wild West approach towards procuring vaccines. The argument then could have been made that it was necessary just to try some outside channels to get as much vaccines to cover the entire dosage of anyone.
But Colville, if you start with the knowledge that it is a wild, wild west out there, would you not put on your bulletproof vest? You know, I mean, at the end of the day, it is not that the warning signs were not there. The EU issued a warning. You acknowledge it is a wild, wild west, but you don't do anything. What was it? High noon and where we walking 12 paces and then turning and shooting. It cannot be that analogy is taken to its logical conclusion. It has to be that you're taking on board the lesson of that exercise, and this being a precarious moment for the entire world, and all governments are fighting and scrambling for the same commodity. I get that. And the manufacturers are selling at cost, so they're selling in bulk because they have any event to get back their investment in order to keep supplying. So then you approach your CARICOM brothers and you say, let us go to the legitimate source together in tandem, because at the end of the day, you have to guarantee to your constituents, to your people, that what they are putting in their bodies is bona fides. So why would you, knowing that it is the wild, wild west, go on the black market? Because that is what it seems like. That is my assessment of the situation, given how it has panned out. Why would you run that risk? Do you run risk with health in any event? This is not, it is a risky environment, but that does not mean that you have to layer on risk on top of that. The proper channels were already delineated, were already spoken of. The price and all was calculated for you. We were told how much Oxford AstraZeneca was selling a dose for. So from the time you hear that it is triple the price, your tentacles should have been up, all the alarm bells going off, that there had to be something wrong with the deal. And it is not enough to say that Barbados did not front the money when we have never got the understanding that Barbados was not ever going to pay. Because if it is that Barbados was not ever going to pay, I would not be seeing documents filed in a law court that speak to the 300,000 people of Barbados, the government of Barbados, and documents that already bear signatures referencing your agency on behalf of the people of Barbados.
And just to add to that a little bit, obviously Barbados is basically a flying fish in the ocean when it comes to the procurement of vaccinations. And the whole move to align yourself with a couple other islands and purchase en bloc, in bulk, it's a good move. But as the Prime Minister said, it is the wild, wild west. We are small folks in all this. So just as the President said, and First Vice President Andre, you have to have expert negotiators in a situation like this. You have to have persons with experience to do this. And it surprises me that, as Madam President said, we would actually recruit someone with no previous medical procurement history to do such a thing. And then secondly, the people of Barbados knows nothing about it. It does not speak to transparency. And it even makes me ask the question, why should we not believe some of the things that we've been hearing in the last 2 days from this government? I mean, how could the Minister of Health not know about this? Even when you listen to the explanation given by Minister of Education yesterday about the process between the middle person, Barbados, and the vendor. How can the Minister of Health not know about this? And I think he should be taken to task to explain how can a company operate on behalf of Barbados? How can he not know about it? I think it leaves a lot of questions. It's no secret we're battling vaccine hesitancy in this country. There's a myriad of accusations about lack of information, lack of correct information, forthrightness coming from the authorities. And then a situation like this, it certainly does not help us. And I think I support Madam President yet again and First Vice President. We need to have the answers to a situation like this. I believe we could have done better.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very, very much for your time, but Comrade Andre has something he wishes to share with you.
Okay. And this is more so in response to, given the current COVID numbers and a response to the figures that we had, and also the appeal from the president of the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners, and then you also saw the very emotional appeal from Dr. Corey Ford yesterday in the broadcast that was done. Our initial assessment of the situation is that the government's current response to COVID is off target. For the last 5 days period, the 15th to the 20th of September, we had 559 positive cases and 6 deaths. It was reported that 941 persons were in isolation up to the 21st of September. That number has actually risen. And I would just want to share with you that for September alone, we had 1,832 positive cases and 9 deaths, not including the one which was reported today. And when you compare that to the period in February 2021, which was our highest peak, but the entire month of February, we had just about 1,555 cases. So obviously, what these figures are showing us is that we are now at a new peak, and we definitely need to put some corrective measures in place. We've also seen that our healthcare facilities are maxed out. They're under tremendous pressure. We heard that appeal yesterday from the persons at the healthcare facilities. I would also like to commend the government too for taking up one of the initiatives which we suggested, in that you actually need to go into Harrison's Point and begin to show Barbadians the true picture of what it is to be treating persons down there, not the administrative issues, but from a medical standpoint. So I commend them for that effort yesterday, which is one of the initiatives which we have asked to happen to bring about more compliance from Barbadians in terms of taking COVID seriously, and for us all to recognize that potentially everyone that we encounter could be infected with COVID, and we'll have to take our own personal responsibility in terms of social distancing, wearing a mask, practicing proper hand sanitizing, washing hands, and also where you can, if you have not done it already, get the vaccine, and especially encourage the elderly persons within your household and community to get the vaccine, because it's your own personal responsibility to keep COVID out of your household. The point that we need to look at in terms of managing COVID in Barbados is the capacity of the healthcare facilities. Yesterday, they announced that Foundation School was set up as an isolation center. We know right now we have more than 5 or 6 of our secondary schools being used as isolation centers. All of the staff to man these isolation centers come from our lone healthcare facility, the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and through the polyclinic setting as well. And we also have heard complaints of persons not being able to access treatment when they go to the polyclinics to see the doctor. Doctors are not there, or for whatever reason, they have to come back another day for treatment. And this just magnifies and shows the strain that the healthcare system is under. So we are asking the government that it is time that they do what they have been elected to do, and that is to govern, and that is to lead and show true leadership. If we are to win this fight against COVID right now, we will have to tighten the restrictions as suggested by the healthcare practitioners. The Democratic Labour Party, BAM, and the virologists have suggested that we look at changing our travel protocols. We have not heard the government making any mention of increasing controls at the border. What was suggested is that we need to start having a mandatory 3-day quarantine with testing on the 3rd day, so that we can track and identify all positive cases of COVID at the border, because we recognize that vaccinated persons can be COVID positive as well. So this policy, which we currently have, where vaccinated persons only spend 1 night in quarantine, is clearly not sufficient. We need to do better than that. And we would want to make a few recommendations to the government. One, focus on marketing the vaccine and not schooling citizens. Two, make vaccines available at pharmacies. It is done overseas. In this way, we can free up our nurses and nurses' aides, and the pharmacies already have storage facilities, and once the rudimentary training is given, the vaccines can be done by pharmacists. Two, the announcement that private doctors can dispense the vaccine seems to have only been a mere announcement. By now, persons should be able to call their doctors to schedule their jabs. It's not happening, and we're asking the Prime Minister to make it happen. The government is clearly demonstrating that this crisis is presenting a serious challenge to them, and rather than shooting down comments, the PM needs to reach out to the opposition and others who are critical of her efforts. She must now be sincere in her rhetoric that we are in this together. Now is not the time to play the blame game, but rather to take full responsibility for the challenges we are experiencing and demonstrate leadership at a time when it is needed most. So we ask the government to think very clearly, because Barbadians want to get back to their normal way of life. Our focus right now should be dealing with the community spread, and once that is put under control, increasing the surveillance at the borders so that Barbadians can get back to living with fewer restrictions and no curfews. It can be done, but you need to properly police COVID-19 in Barbados, and also make more resources available to the COVID monitoring unit so that they can go into the communities as well and gently enforce with persons the importance of following the protocols. These are the things that we need to see happening now so that we can deal with the community spread of the variants in Barbados. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Good.
You got another question, Colby?